right. So, hello, class. Today we're going to be covering two critical operation security concepts for the Security Plus. So, we're going to be talking about asset management and change management. These might sound like business practices, but they're deeply intertwined with maintaining a very secure environment. Now, first up is the asset management. So, what is it? As it says, it involves identifying, tracking, managing an organization's hardware, software, data, and other critical resources. Why? Well, we need to ensure that they are properly secured and maintained. So, you simply cannot just secure what you don't know that you have. So, asset management is the foundation of knowing your inventory. Next is change management. This process ensures that changes are implemented in a controlled, predictable manner, reducing the risk of introducing security vulnerabilities or causing system disruptions. Uncontrolled changes are a primary source of security incidents within the industries, okay? They are what produces many of the outages, so change management provides the structure to help us prevent it. Now, both asset and change management start even before a device or software is in use. We normally start during the acquisition and procurement phase. This is the process of selecting, purchasing, and integrating technology, services, and solutions. Critically, the goal is selecting solutions. That's what we're looking for. Now, we're going to make sure that they enhance our security's posture for our organization. Security needs to be considered from the beginning and not an afterthought. So, what should we consider when we acquire something from a security perspective? Does the product meet our baseline? Is the vendor reputable? How is the product built and delivered? How is the new asset going to fit into our existing security infrastructure? How would it be updated? Okay. So, we need to follow some certain steps before we start with our acquisition. The first one is we need a needs assessment. We need to clearly define the business need and the security requirements. Once we know that, we can then move on to vendor and product selection. This is us researching our options and evaluating them against the requirements, including cybersecurity. Then we're going to procure the item, the actual purchasing process itself, including negotiating security clauses in our contracts. Then we're going to bring the asset into the environment securely, often involving configuration hardening. Then we're going to have ongoing maintenance. We need to make sure that adding the asset to our inventory, applying patches, and monitoring is part of our everyday process. Now, a huge part of modern asset management is going to involve mobile systems. So, mobile asset deployment covers the distribution, management, and security of mobile devices such as smartphones, tablets, laptops within the organization. These devices are often going to also have security data outside the traditional network parameter. So, remember that they're going to be taking these home. So, the perimeter of the business itself, a lot of these desktops don't ever leave the business office, but anything that's mobile can leave. So we need to make sure that they're, for one, maintained properly. And how do we do that? Well, oops, sorry, let me go back a slide. There it is. We're going to then do a process that we like to call MDM, okay? Mobile device management. Now, before we actually bring these devices within our network itself, there are going to be a couple different models that you need to know for the Security Plus. For instance, BYOD, bring your own device. Employees use their own personal device at work. It's cost effective, but it's going to be significant because now how do we secure all those devices? We can do COPE, which is corporate owned, personally enabled. The company owns the device itself, but allows personal use within certain limits. A little more control than BYOD. We could do the choose your own device, where employees choose from a pre-approved list of devices that the company will purchase. Now, this is going to balance choice with standardization, so we can have a standardized fleet. Or we can just go full corporate-owned business only, which is, well, the company owns the device, but it's strictly limited to business use and offers, well, the maximum control for the business itself. Now, managing mobile assets is going to involve several key security configurations. We need to have policies and tools to handle the configurations, security settings, applications, data protection, authentication, secure connections, monitoring, endpoint protection, and lastly, even incident response for these types of devices. Someone will lose the device, so what do we do when it happens? And this is where MDM is really going to shine. Okay, MDM is going to allow us to administer and enforce these security policies across all of our devices. This includes things like strong password requirements or enforcing screen lockouts. Okay, and maybe even disabling cameras or specific features to make sure that they just can't be used. We can configure Wi-Fi and VPN settings and even restrict app configurations. So let's revisit more of asset management itself. It's a process of identifying, tracking, and maintaining an organization's IT assets through, well, the entire life cycle, from procurement all the way through destruction of the device itself. What are some of those key components? A good asset management program includes, well, a few things. For one, we're going to have an inventory. This is going to be the comprehensive database of all assets, hardware, software, licenses, virtual machines, cloud instances, everything that we have. We're going to track it, know where the assets are, who's using them, and what is their current state. We're going to then document the configurations as baselines, so that way we know, well, different asset types we have and know what is expected from each one. We're going to track the software licenses to ensure that they're compliant and avoid any unnecessary costs. And then we're going to start tracking and scheduling maintenance and patching activities. Why? Well, we want to make sure that they don't get out of hand because, well, patching is the number one way that we're going to keep these devices secure. Some of the best practices to do that will need things like, well, automation. We're going to need to have a way to discover and track all our assets automatically. Manual tracking is prone to errors, so we want something automated. We want to integrate our asset systems with things like our security monitoring or help desk or configuration management software. This will help us keep track of, is everything working properly, including regular audits, periodically verifying the accuracy of all the inventory against reality. Because we're always going to find that if you don't look at the system more often, you will lose track of it. Clear ownership. We want to make sure that who is responsible for each piece of gear that comes from laptops to servers to anything that touches our network. And then lastly, we want to manage the assets from purchase all the way through secure disposal. So we do want to make sure that we understand that, hey, are they being disposed of properly so that the data can be handled properly as well. Now, the end of the life cycle is just as important as the beginning. Asset disposal and decommissioning are critical processes. This ensures that all of our IT assets are securely retired and when they're no longer needed. You can't just throw old computers or hard drives in the trash. So there are a couple steps in making sure that we dispose properly. Step one, we want to do data sanitation. We want to make sure the device is completely and securely erased. Standard file deletion is not sufficient because the data can often be recovered. We want to use things like cryptographic erasure or data writing like Derek Buchanuk using specialized software, or even physical destruction of the hard drives. One of my favorite ways is just to shred the hard drive. So the physical destruction often is the most secure way of destroying any of the storage medium, especially for the highly sensitive data. Shredding, crushing, disintegration renders all the data fully unrecoverable. Sometimes, if necessary, we might want to disassemble the storage medium before destruction. We want to make sure that we're going to be in compliance because remember, we still have the environmental responsibility here, such as e-waste. Or we may even want to repurpose it, an option that is normally available, but after verified data sanitation. So repurpose or donation is a great way to ensure. So the absolute takeaway here is ensure no data is left or is recoverable. Data disposal isn't the only technical issue that we're talking about here. It's going to be the legal and regulatory one as well. Regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, or even PCI DSS have specific requirements on how sensitive data must be handled, including the secure destruction. Failure to comply can lead to hefty consequences and penalties, including massive fines and even reputational damage. So to prove compliance here, we sometimes need to do chain of custody to ensure that, well, the disposal process is met. This means that documenting each step, who authorized the disposal, who performed sanitation and destruction, when was it done, and was the destruction verified. All right, so let's shift back to change management real quick. The process of handling modifications to the IC system must be tracked, okay? So we're going to go through the formal management process to ensure that everything is tested properly. So the key components that we're going to be looking at here, for one, will be the documentation itself. Submitting the formal request detailing the proposed change, the reason, and the potential impact. We need to assess that the technical and the business's risks, dependencies, and resources required to make the change. Just because you're patching a software, will it impact the business at all? Rebooting it in the middle of the night might have the least amount of impact, so the business might require you to do this at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, once you have that process all done, then you need to get it approved by normally what we like to call the CAB, the Change Advisory Board. Now, it doesn't matter what process your business uses, as long as it gets approved by its stakeholders. That's what we're looking for. Once it's been approved, we do need to make sure that we've tested the change in a non-productive environment, because we can't say, well, it worked on my laptop, right? We're going to then perform the change according to the plan, and then we're going to verify that the change was successful and didn't cause any unintended consequences. Now, what is required here on change management as well is having a documented procedure to undo any of the changes we made in case they fail. Rollback plans are definitely one of those requirements here. So some common challenges as we move through it could be, well, resistance to the process. Users or even IT staff seeing the process as bureaucratic, very political. That's basically what I was trying to go for. Oh. Now, even if you are resistant to change, how do we handle those emergency changes as well? Because those urgent changes outside the normal process without introducing additional risk is sometimes hard. Because you have a failure, your first thought is to bring everything back up as fast as possible. You may have lack of resources. Maybe you don't have very much time or even personnel to do proper testing and review. Try not to be the next CrowdStrike. Make sure you test your change control. There might be some poor communications, like maybe you didn't notify the right parties that the upcoming changes were happening. How many times did you use a service and it goes down and you didn't even know it was going down because IT never told you about it? And then lastly, we want to make sure that rushing changes into production without adequate validation is something we avoid at all costs. So some of the best practices is, for one, to have a clear policy. How are we going to communicate all of our changes that we're making within our system. We're going to use templates for our requests, approvals, and even our testings. We're going to automate things as much as we can. We're going to communicate proactively on any planned changes to our stakeholders. We're going to analyze the success or failures of changes to improve the process. So just because it's a policy doesn't mean we can't go fix the policy. And then we're going to link our change management system within our asset management and our incident responses within the organization. Now, remember, every change, no matter how small, can have a technical ripple effect throughout your network. Applying a patch might break compatibility with another application. Reconfiguring a firewall, for example, could block legitimate traffic. Upgrading a server OS might require updating the applications that are running on it. So a key part of change management is anticipating and mitigating these technical controls through analysis and change. Now, a critical part of change management is documentation. This means we need to systematically record every modification we make to an IT system. This includes anything that is security configurations. This record is definitely going to be something that we want to change, to store with our change management system. So that way, if we never need to refer back to it, we can look back to see, well, what did change? What happened to this system? Because it's going to help us. When something breaks, the change log is the first place to look to see what was modified recently. It's going to provide us evidence that changes were made were from authorized and followed the procedures itself. And it will also help our new team members understand the system's history and configuration. Now, if we do have a working change, well, it's going to allow us to be successful to change or replicate this elsewhere. That way we can help prevent any deviations from the approved security configuration. Without good documentation, maintaining a complex IT environment will become exponentially harder and even riskier. All right, that's the end for chapter 12. Thanks for watching. I'll see you for the next chapter of 13. Have a good one.